Hey everybody, welcome to Mailin' It, the official podcast of the United States Postal Service. I'm your host, Dale Parsan. Late last year, the federal government promised to deliver free COVID-19 test kits to any U.S. household that wanted them, and the Postal Service played a leading role in making sure that promise was kept. In today's episode, we're going to take a behind-the-scenes look at how the Postal Service was able to ensure the rapid delivery of millions of COVID-19 test kits. Here to give us the inside scoop on the test kit delivery operation are this episode's guests, Preetha Mehra and Linda Malone. Preetha is the Postal Service's Chief Information Officer and Executive Vice President. Linda is our Vice President of Engineering Systems. Preetha, Linda, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Before we dive in, it would be great if both of you could tell our listeners a little bit about yourselves and the work that you do here at the Postal Service. So Preetha, let's start with you. How long have you been with the Postal Service? And simply, what's it like managing one of the world's largest technology infrastructures?
Well, I've been with the Postal Service for over 32 years, and I just love my job. It's fascinating. There's never a dull moment managing the technology for the Postal Service. We have 5 solution centers across the country. We have over 37,000 or 38,000 network points. So we manage the entire telecom network for the Postal Service. We have over 20,000 servers, 90 petabytes of data, 950 applications, and the list goes on. So it is really exciting, and we are doing a lot to modernize and transform our technology infrastructure.
You said more than 90 petabytes, so I'm assuming that's a little bit bigger than my smartphone.
Way bigger than the smartphone.
Preetha, thanks for that. All right, Linda, you're up. When did you join the Postal Service, and what do you do as VP of Engineering Systems?
Hi, Dale. I started the Postal Service in 1985, so I am on my 38th year in the Postal Service.
Congratulations.
I started as a letter carrier in Wilmington, Delaware, and I have been very fortunate throughout the years to have a variety of different jobs and assignments. So I've been a plant manager, a district manager. I've worked in engineering on programs. I've been an area vice president. I've been a network vice president. So I've been very, very fortunate. In my current job as engineering, I'm in charge of all the mail processing and delivery equipment that we use to sort our mail, whether that's packages, letters, and flats. And I also have a division, my operational excellence, vehicle operational excellence, that works on the next generation delivery vehicle. So it's exciting stuff across the board. I, like Preetha, am very fortunate to be part of this Postal Service family and what we do.
Sounds like I've got the right 2 guests here with me today. Let's set the scene for our listeners. Late last year, during the height of the Omicron variant of COVID-19, the Biden administration announced it would send free rapid at-home test kits to any U.S. household that wanted them. As anyone can imagine, that involved a number of really big changes. One was standing up a new web portal for ordering those test kits. Another was managing the logistics of distributing millions of those test kits at a time. Preetha, how was the Postal Service able to take on such a big job in such a short amount of time?
Well, I think it started with Louis DeJoy's leadership. He immediately galvanized his leadership team. So every one of his direct reports had a role in this. You know, the CTO was designing the kits. We had the logistics officers and the processing officers were making sure that our transportation and our kitting operations were great, and so on and so forth. You know, we had everyone playing a role, and from day one. So everyone's role clearly defined. It took the village. And then secondly, we have a pretty unmatched infrastructure, right? Over 38,000 facilities, you know, to deliver to every home every day, the test kits. And we have enormous storage capabilities because of our immense size and our, you know, the facilities we have across the country. And thirdly, we have a breadth of skilled employees. And I think those 3 came together really well to make this happen.
Absolutely. From the outside view, though, a lot of the American people might think that this was relatively straightforward for the Postal Service. And, you know, being internal, we all know that wasn't the case. Are there any particularly unique things about what we had to do to be able to provide these test kits that really stood out to you?
Yes, I think almost everything we had to do there was unique, right? So we had to essentially stand up a system in 3 weeks. right? So Louis got the call in December around Christmas time. And by mid-January, we had to have it up and running, which is we had to receive these pallets of tremendous volumes of test kits in pallets. We had to distribute these pallets to our fulfillment centers where they were kitted. And we don't really kit. We deliver packages. So this was new, and we set up a kitting operation. Linda's going to talk to you about that. And then we had to, the delivery part we do every day.
And the kitting, that's the process of taking these pre-built, packages, in this case, the COVID test kits, and actually putting them into boxes, taping them up, labeling them. That's the process, right?
That's exactly right. And then, of course, on the website, standing up a website that we were not quite certain we knew how many orders we were going to get in an hour, in a second. So there was a large quantity of unknowns. What we did know was that the COVID test kits were in short supply. And of course, everyone wanted it.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of unknowns for us that we had to plan for.
And we'll dive a little bit more into how you guys basically planned for worst case scenario. But Linda, we started talking a little bit about the logistics behind all this. So I want to kick it over to you. What are some of the more unique challenges about this?
This was an initiative totally outside of our wheelhouse. And I agree totally with Preetha. It started with our restructuring that happened about 2 years ago when Louis DeJoy came on board. Louis comes in, there's one voice, there's one mission, and there's one way to get things done. And what he did was he utilized the entire officer corps. He delineated responsibilities and accountabilities, and everybody had their own role to play with the expectation of perfection. In this scenario, it was very defined. Engineering, which I'm in charge of, you do the standard work. We have incredible industrial engineers that are part of our employee base. We took them out to Denver and Jacksonville. Those were our two pilot sites. At the time, Preetha said there were no test kits to be found. We made them up. We had little boxes everywhere because the different manufacturers came in different quantities and different configurations. And then we had somebody back in engineering doing what we called a destroy test. How do we drop it? How do we throw it? Because the last thing we would want is for us to deliver something to our customers that was damaged in transit and processing. So we had to think about all of those things to ensure the high quality customer experience when somebody went and opened up a package. And it was under enormous time constraints, 3 weeks, get it done, figure out how to do it, figure out how to standardize this across multiple places, standard work, reflection periods. One of the things that we did that was a genius from the OIEs is we did a table overlay. So we ordered 3,200 tables for the kitting operation. The overlays said, this is where your packages go. This is where your envelopes go. This is where your bubble wrap goes. If you're configuring something that requires bubble wrap to protect the test kits, here's where your rubber bands. Here's where the container is to put your finished goods. Here's where your raw materials is pulled from. It was amazing to be part of this process, to see how well organizationally we could do this and hit a home run.
Linda, so we talked a bit about how COVID test kits were in short supply at the time and how the administration just put out this promise to the American people. You had to create out of cardboard and whatever materials you had these various test kits to do testing on. Were there variations in the number of test kits, the types of boxing? I mean, how significant was that?
Oh, that was pretty significant. There was a lot of variability. We had up to 7 different manufacturers. The goal was to put 4 test kits into an envelope. Some boxes came with 1 test kit. Some boxes came with 4 test kits. One manufacturer was 2 test kits. So in some cases, you were taking a single box and putting it into a padded envelope. Other cases, you were taking 4 boxes, wrapping it in bubble wrap, putting a rubber band on it, and putting it in a poly envelope. So there was a lot of variability across the board. In each one of the fulfillment sites, we needed to keep the raw materials separated.
The raw material being the test kits that are coming in.
The test kits by manufacturer And as we progressed, it was by manufacturer and by expiration date. And then when we gave it to our kitting operation people, we needed to make sure that they understood what configurations needed to happen in order to secure the product within a package.
So to me, that's just screaming a lot of standard operating procedures, a lot of training, and a lot of quality control.
A lot of training, a lot of quality control. We saw a huge engagement with our employees on the involvement. They knew what the expectation was. Every employee was told you're going to get through this much by lunch and this much by the end of the day. We had reflections at the end of every night, what went well, what didn't go well. We had the engagement of our employees on that direct level, and that was really key on the quality. In some cases, the kitters would do their own quality control. In other cases, we had another functional area come in and help with quality control. So we were very laser focused on making sure that we prepared the right amount of test kits going to our customers.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So let's jump back a little bit. I want to touch on the aspect of this operation that is most relevant to the American people, the part of the operation that's most visible to the average person. So we needed to create this new web portal, this new site, Preetha, that you touched on. So how did your team do this under such a short timeline, understanding that there could have been immense demand from the American people?
That's a great question. So what we did was first establish a goal. The goal we were given was to handle 1 million test kits an hour. And we huddled in the CIO group and said, that's not going to be enough. Let's shoot for 20 million an hour. Yeah. So we actually established a goal within our organization. And so the first thing we did was we already have an ordering website where you can go and buy stamps. It's the postal store. So we immediately looked at that. That obviously was the first obvious solution. So we started testing. We started load testing, saying, can we hit 20 million orders an hour? At the same time, we were developing the website to, ask all the questions about the test kits and the address. But we started load testing early in the game.
And sorry to cut you off, but load testing, just for the audience, that's very similar to stress testing. You're trying to see if you can break it.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So essentially, we had a simulator which was simulating orders at the speeds at which we wanted it. So we started at 1 million and ramped up to 20. And we realized that our postal store, which is an on-prem product, was not going to go well beyond about 1 million an hour. So we said that goes to plan C. We were going to have 3 redundant pathways. And so the next 2 we decided were going to be on cloud. So we picked 2 cloud providers and we developed 2 solutions. So essentially we had 3 teams working this. One on each of the cloud providers, and then one was on-prem. And it was almost like a competition. Who's going to go higher, So I think that's where we were truly successful, was starting the load testing earlier, making sure that we had a very modular design. So, which was distinct, independent, and redundant services for order acceptance, validation, distribution, and fulfillment. So the failure of one component would not impact any of the others. And the one that was most visible had a triple redundancy.
Very nice. So we talked about how important this was to the American people. And I think in such a short time frame, just wanting to be able to set up the system, get the orders in, and then we'll manage in the background and we'll mail it out seems like a really straightforward solution. But tracking really becomes a big part of this, because the American people, once they feel as though they've gotten their order in, yes, I'm going to get something in, I'm going to get something in the mail. But then the next question is, when am I going to get it, right? So we start getting to tracking. How were we able to provide that kind of information on such a large scale to the American people that were placing these orders?
So keep in mind that, we offer tracking on a daily basis to both our commercial and our consumers, right? So that's something we do very well for a living. So you can go on to our public website and get your tracking information, or you can get a feed and we can give it to you electronically. So the design that we built essentially leveraged those existing capabilities that we had. So when you placed an order, you immediately got an order number, And as soon as your shipment was created with a unique barcode, you got the barcode information, and you could come onto our website and see where your package was and when you were going to receive it. So that was pretty straightforward because that was capability we already had that we relied on. The one thing we did do was every system that touched this program, we shored up, including our tracking systems, our visibility systems, our customer care systems, our inventory management systems, all of them. We worked with every vendor that was even part of this. So the telecom network, making sure that. So we literally took the journey from the start to the finish and looked at everything, every system that was going to be touched. And we had teams working them.
Did the Postal Service conduct any of its own communications in order to better inform the American people of this opportunity?
Of course, we had USPS.com website, which had a very prominent, where the COVID test kits were very highly prominently visible. But what was really interesting was we actually did an informed delivery campaign. So this is essentially a daily digest that we send to customers, advising of their mail and packages that are to be delivered to them. And we have over 40 million people signed up for that. And so we actually issued a campaign advising customers that you can go and order these test kits. And when we did that, we saw that those campaigns drove an increase of over 300% on the days that the campaigns were launched.
We're very big fans of informed delivery here on the podcast. And just as a reminder to our listeners, it is free to sign up. It's a wonderful service. That covers a lot of the website. Let's talk about the delivery effort and that just massive effort that it took. So we're talking internal kitting, labeling, packaging. Linda, what were the biggest concerns as the project got underway?
The biggest concern was the timeline and what needed to be done.
Yeah.
But again, having industrial engineers coming up with the right standard work, coming up with time methods so that we knew what the yield would be, how many could we produce by manufacturer and the timelines. And then we modified some of our scanners so that we could ensure that we had visibility throughout the system. So we knew when we had raw materials, how much we had. Finished goods to us was 4 kits in an envelope without a label. And then we had the labeling process. So when we scanned a label, then we were able to tell Preetha, now you can go back to the customer with that important email and tell them that their product has been received, has been made, and is on its way through our processing and delivery. We have, on our delivery side, an unparalleled infrastructure. We go to every home every day, 160 million addresses. So that part was the easy part. It was keeping that customer engaged throughout the entire process. People were depending on this. I mean, we allowed a little bit of control back to our customers over this crazy pandemic that for years devastated a lot of our families and our communities. One of the social media sites that I got was somebody went and on their way out of their neighborhood, they picked up their mail out of the mailbox. They were going to an anniversary gathering, lots of family.
Okay.
They took the test in the car and found out they were positive.
Oh, no.
And the thing they were so appreciative of was, I did not expose my family and my friends, and you gave me a tiny little bit of control over my life in a very chaotic world.
So they were able to just turn the car around and head back.
Turn around and head back.
That's fantastic.
And our employees helped enable that in a very optimal and efficient manner. Our employees were just wowed. They were so, so proud of being able to be a little part of this overall test kit initiative.
I have to agree. The amount of pride that's felt in our employee base, just in speaking with them at all levels of our organization, is pretty incredible. And I want to stay on employees. So we talked a little bit about that. This was right after the peak season for the Postal Service for the holiday mailing, and something that I want to make very clear to the audience is that our operation didn't stop. We still had mail going on. You know, we weren't able to say, hey, let's pause for a moment. Let's handle COVID test kits. We had to make sure we kept both balls in the air, so to speak. So how did we handle staffing, Linda?
The timing was just opportune. The year before in peak, we struggled. We had a lot of challenges and a lot of difficulties. And that was Lewis's first year with us. So the last peak, we went out and got additional square footage, probably 8 million additional square feet, to make sure that we had the space necessary to flex up our infrastructure to be able to handle the peak workload. Coming in, and it was literally, I think Preetha came back on December 24th to start talking about this. Coming right after peak allowed us to keep some of that peak help that we had bumped up for that peak hiring. We worked with our unions. We got agreements to do that. So we ended up having space availability and people availability right at the perfect time that we were able to utilize for this initiative. It was perfect.
And again, just another internal stakeholder. Now we've got union representatives involved, just wanting to make sure in this short timeline that we can all work together to make sure we can, again, keep this promise that the administration gave to the American people.
The other important thing about that is Lewis had meetings every day with the ELTN officers. So the one voice, this is how we're going to do it. This is the way that we're going to do it. This is how we're going to communicate it. This is how we're going to standardize that customer experience, either through our messaging on the emails to them, those who chose to give us an email address, or through our customer service portal. We were keenly precision focused on getting this mission done across the board. And it was fantastic to be part of that.
Preetha, so we've talked a lot about the operation and how we had to stand up things in such a short amount of time, but let's talk results. What can you tell us about how the Postal Service delivered on the test kits?
Oh, well, we've delivered over 400 million test kits. On a peak day, we delivered 6 million. It took us about 1.2 average days to deliver.
That's fantastic. That's incredibly fast.
Yes.
So what do we think are some of the lasting impacts of this success on the organization? And I'd like to hear from both of you on this one.
It really solidified what it means to have operational excellence in the Postal Service. It opened my eyes. It opened a lot of operations' eyes that we can do anything with the correct vision, the correct focus, the appropriate infrastructure support, which we got across the functional areas. The sky's limitless now for us. So as we look at network modernization, as we look at improving our processing and our delivery infrastructure, we know that it'll work because we had this test run with the test kits.
Yeah.
It is unbelievable. The pride and the sense of accomplishment that we got following one voice, and Lewis knowing exactly what was needed, when it was needed, his outside business acumen that was able to lead us towards that. So this can be applied in absolutely everything else that we do operationally.
Right place, right time. Preetha, how about yourself?
I would say, I totally agree with Linda. Throughout this experience, we have clearly demonstrated our ability to shine as an unrivaled delivery organization. The assets that we have and the assets that we are enhancing provide a clear vision into the future of what the USPS can offer its customers. As an example, this impressive infrastructure is now the foundation of our USPS Connect suite of products, which allows for same-day, next-day, two-day delivery from any point to across the U.S. So really, and also, as Linda mentioned, very strong leadership, very strong communications throughout the process, very focused teams. Whenever there was an issue, it was raised, it was escalated, and, immediately addressed.
So now that we've talked about, setup, we've talked about a bit of the results, where's the Postal Service now? And this question's for either of you.
Well, the COVID test kit website is still live, and folks can go in and order, and you can issue up to 3 orders. So if you haven't done so, I would highly encourage you to do so.
Wonderful. Linda, Preetha, thank you so much for joining us today and giving us a bit of a behind-the-scenes look at how the Postal Service was able to help the administration keep on their promise of delivering at-home COVID-19 test kits.
Thank you, Dale.
All right, it's time for Did You Know? This is a chance to share some interesting details about the Postal Service that most people probably don't know. This episode's nugget of obscure information deals with history and geography. Did you know that at least 150 of the first U.S. post offices in each state originally operated within or under the authority of another nation? Before the American Revolution, post offices operated under British rule in each of the 13 American colonies. William Goddard set up the Constitutional Post in 1774 to allow colonists to send letters to one another without worrying about British postmasters opening and reading them. In July 1775, the Continental Congress created our independent American postal system, which was based partly on Goddard's network. But even after American independence from Great Britain, post offices in Vermont, for example, were established by the Independent Republic of Vermont. That's right, before becoming the 14th state in 1791, Vermont considered itself an independent republic. In 1777, with the Revolutionary War well underway, Vermonters actually declared independence both from Great Britain and from New York. Vermont adopted a constitution, the first in North America to abolish property restrictions on voting. And in 1784, Vermont established its own postal service. The rates of postage were the same as those in the US, and 4 of Vermont's post offices would eventually end up as part of the US's larger postal system. Well, that does it for today's episode of Mailin' It. That wraps up this episode of Mailin' It, where we had the opportunity to sit down with the Postal Service's Chief Information Officer and VP of Engineering Systems to learn about the incredible efforts made by the Postal Service to ensure the American people had access to COVID-19 tests. One of the biggest takeaways for me was our ability as an organization to stand up these operations, adding tens of millions of test kits to our delivery schedule without having negative impacts on the normal, everyday mail that we expect. This really illustrates how dynamic the Postal Service can be for the American public. Don't forget to subscribe to Mailin' It wherever you get your podcast to make sure you don't miss the next episode. And follow along on Instagram at US Postal Service, Twitter at USPS, and on Facebook.